The strange readings had been haunting Lisa Reynolds for 3 days straight. Her ship, the Pioneer, had picked up energy signals from a dead system that shouldn't have had any life at all. The signals were unlike anything in their databases, pulsing with patterns that almost seemed alive. Lisa pushed a strand of dark hair from her face as she studied the data again. She had been exploring space for 8 years, but this was different. The energy was getting weaker by the hour, like something dying slowly in the void. "Ben, take another look at these readings," she called to Dr. Ben Carter, her xenobiologist. He was young for his position, only 32, but he had a gift for understanding alien life forms that others missed. Ben walked over from his station, coffee mug in hand. "Still looks organic to me, Captain. But that's impossible. Nothing could survive on that rock. The surface temperature is minus 200 degrees. Rosa Martinez, their chief engineer, looked up from her repair work. "Maybe it's not on the surface, could be underground or in some kind of ship." David Park, handling communications, adjusted his headset. "I'm picking up something else now. It's very faint, but it sounds almost like distress calls. Not mechanical, uns. Something else." Lisa felt a chill run down her spine. In all her years of exploration, she had learned to trust her instincts. Right now, they were screaming that something was terribly wrong in that dead system. "Change course," she ordered. "We're going to take a closer look." The Pioneer dropped out of faster-than-light travel 2 hours later. The planet looked exactly as their scans had predicted. A frozen, airless rock with no signs of life. But the energy readings were stronger now, coming from what looked like a crater on the northern continent. "There," David pointed at his screen. "The signals are coming from inside that impact site. And, Captain, I'm definitely picking up distress calls now. They're not in any language our computers recognize." As they entered the planet's thin atmosphere, Lisa saw it. The crater wasn't from a meteor impact. Something huge had crashed here, and recently. The twisted remains of what might have been a ship stretched across the frozen ground, but it was like no ship she had ever seen. The hull seemed to be made of crystal that still glowed with fading light. "My God," Ben whispered. "Look at the size of that thing. It's at least 10 times bigger than our ship." They landed a safe distance away and suited up. The surface was deadly cold, but their environmental suits could handle it. As they approached the wreck, Lisa noticed that the crystal hull was actually beautiful. Even dying, it pulsed with colors that reminded her of the aurora back on Earth. The distress calls were clearer now, echoing through their helmet radios. They weren't mechanical signals at all. They were voices, speaking in tones of pure desperation and pain. "The hull breach is over there," Rosa pointed. "Looks like we can get inside without cutting through anything." They climbed through the opening into a space that took Lisa's breath away. The interior of the ship was like a cathedral made of living light, but the beauty was overshadowed by the massive form lying in the center. It was a dragon. Lisa had seen pictures of Earth's mythical dragons in old books, but this was something far beyond any legend. The creature was easily 40 feet long, with scales that looked like living crystal. Patterns of light flowed across its body, but they were growing dimmer with each passing moment. The dragon was dying. "Impossible," Ben breathed. "Dragons don't exist. They're just myths." But as they watched, the great head lifted slightly, and eyes like liquid starlight focused on them. When it spoke, the voice filled their minds rather than their ears. "Strange, small ones. You are not of the hegemony."
"What
are you?" Lisa found her voice. "We're humans, from Earth. We picked up your distress signals." "Humans." The dragon's mental voice was growing weaker. "I do not know this species. Are you hunters?" "No," Lisa said firmly. "We explore. We learn. We help when we can." A sound from deeper in the ship made them all turn. It was a whimpering noise like young animals in distress. Following the sound, they found 3 small forms huddled together in what might have been a nursery. Baby dragons. They were no bigger than house cats, their crystal scales dim with fear and hunger. When they saw the humans, The little ones pressed together and bared tiny fangs that glowed with weak light. The smallest ones spoke in broken words that their translators could barely understand. "Please don't hurt us. Mommy is dying." Lisa felt her heart break. These weren't monsters or threats. They were children, terrified and alone. "We won't hurt you," she said softly, removing her helmet so they could see her face. "We want to help." The mother dragon's voice filled their minds again, but weaker now. "My children, they are all that remain. My name is Seren. I was trying to reach the edge of the galaxy, to hide them where the hunters could not follow." "Hunters?" Ben asked. Seren's great head turned toward him, and suddenly his mind filled with images and memories. He saw worlds of crystal and light, beings like Seren tending to gardens that spanned continents. He saw ships of war descending from the stars bringing death and fire. He saw the systematic hunting of an entire species. "The hegemony," Seren whispered. 7 species united in fear of what we might become. They have hunted us for 300 years. They call us dangerous, too powerful to be allowed to live. More images flowed into Ben's mind. Cities of crystal turning to ash. Dragon families scattered across the stars, picked off one by hegemony hunters. A proud ancient species reduced to a handful of refugees. "But you're not dangerous," Lisa said. "You're gardeners, protectors." "Yes, we seeded dead worlds with life. We guided young species toward wisdom. We never conquered, never enslaved. But they feared our long lives, our abilities. They said we were a threat to galactic order." The 3 baby dragons crept closer to the humans. The smallest, barely the size of a kitten, reached out with one tiny paw to touch Lisa's gloved hand. "Mommy?" it whispered. Serene's breathing became more labored. "My children, their names are Kira, Finn, and Ash. Kira is the eldest. She tries to be brave. Finn has not spoken since we fled our homeworld. And little Ash, he believes he can protect everyone, even though he is the smallest." Lisa looked at the 3 orphans, then back at their dying mother. "What can we do?" "The hegemony hunters. They will find this place soon, they always do. My children, they are the last of our kind. If they die, the Drakmor cease to exist forever." Serene's eyes began to dim. "Strange small ones, humans. I do not know your species, but I sense kindness in you. My children, they will die here in the cold. Unless..." She couldn't finish the sentence, but Lisa understood. The dragon mother was asking her to do the impossible, to save the last members of a species she had never heard of from enemies she couldn't hope to fight. David's voice crackled through the comm system from their ship. "Captain, I'm picking up new signals, multiple ships heading this way fast. ETA about 6 hours. Lisa looked at the 3 baby dragons, then at their dying mother. Every practical part of her mind said this was impossible. They were just one small exploration ship. What could they do against forces that had hunted an entire species to extinction? But as she looked into the eyes of little Ash, still trying to protect his siblings despite his size, she knew there was only one choice she could make. "We'll take them with us," she said quietly. Serene's eyes brightened one last time. "Thank you, strange small one. You give them a chance. That is all anyone can do." The great dragon's light began to fade completely. "Remember, they are not weapons. They are children. They only want to live and grow and make things better. That is what we always were." Lisa knelt beside the 3 orphans as their mother's light went out forever. They pressed against her, seeking warmth and comfort from the only living beings who had shown them kindness. "All right," she said into her comm unit. "Rosa, prep the ship for additional passengers. Ben, gather whatever data you can from this wreck. David, start plotting courses to human space and monitor those incoming signals." She looked down at the 3 small dragons who were now humanity's responsibility. and everyone. We're about to make some very powerful enemies. 3 weeks had passed since the Pioneer left the frozen world where Seren died, and nothing would ever be the same. Lisa Reynolds stood in the converted storage bay that now served as home for the 3 dragon children, watching Ben Carter try to coax little Ash into eating. The baby dragon sat curled in a corner, his crystal scales dim and gray. He hadn't eaten properly since they left his mother's body behind, and his siblings weren't doing much better. Kira, the eldest, spent most of her time staring out the viewports, at the stars, while Finn hadn't spoken a single word since coming aboard. "Come on, little guy," Ben said softly, offering a piece of synthesized protein that their food processors had created. "You need to eat something." Ash looked up with eyes that held too much sadness for such a small creature. "Not hungry," he whispered. "Want mommy." Lisa felt the familiar ache in her chest. These weren't just alien refugees they had rescued. They were traumatized children who had watched their mother die, and now they were surrounded by strange beings on a strange ship, light years from anything they had ever known. Rosa Martinez appeared in the doorway, her hands stained with grease from working on the ship's systems. "Captain, I've finished installing the new environmental controls. The storage bay can now maintain the temperature and humidity levels that Ben recommended for them." "Good work, Rosa. Any word from David on those hegemony transmissions?" Rosa's expression darkened. "You're not going to like what he found." They walked to the communications station where David Park sat surrounded by screens showing intercepted messages. His face was grim as he looked up at them. "I've been analyzing the hegemony communications for weeks now," he said. "Captain, what we stumbled into, it's bigger than we thought. The dragon genocide isn't just some old war, it's still happening." He pulled up a star map showing dozens of systems marked in red. "These are all recent hegemony military actions. They're not just hunting the few dragons left alive. They're targeting any species that might help them, any world that might give them shelter." Lisa studied the map with growing horror. "How many species are we talking about?" "The hegemony is 7 major powers working together. The Vorthan Empire seems to be leading it, but they've got the Kalari Confederacy, the Nexus Collective, and 4 others backing them. Together they control about 60% of known space." Ben looked up from his work with the dragon children. "What's their justification for all this?" David pulled up another screen showing official hegemony broadcasts. "According to their public statements, the Drakmor represent an existential threat to galactic civilization. They claim dragons live for thousands of years, possess dangerous psychic abilities, and their technology is too advanced to be allowed to exist." "But that's insane," Rosa said. "From what we've seen, they're gardeners. They help other species. That's exactly the problem, according to the hegemony," David continued. "They say the dragons interfere with natural development, that they make other species dependent on their help instead of growing strong on their own." Lisa turned back to watch the 3 orphans. Little Ash had finally taken a small bite of food, but his scales remained dim. Kira was trying to comfort Finn, who was having what looked like a nightmare even while awake. "There's more," David said quietly. "I managed to decode some military communications. They know about us now. They know humans took the dragon children and they're not happy about it." "What kind of response are we looking at?" 3 hegemony fleets are moving toward human space. The lead fleet is commanded by someone called War Master Brutus of the Vorthan Empire. He sent a message to Earth demanding that we surrender what he calls the abominations, or face the consequences. Lisa closed her eyes. She had known this was coming, but hearing it still felt like a punch to the gut. "Have we received any response from Earth?" That's the surprising part. Admiral Foster sent back a 2-word reply: "Come and take them." Rosa let out a low whistle. The Admiral's got spine. But do we have the firepower to back that up? Ben looked up from where he was sitting with the dragon children. "Captain, I need to show you something. I've been analyzing the data from Seren's ship, and I think I understand why the hegemony is really afraid." He activated a portable display showing recordings from the dragon ship's memory banks. The images showed worlds transformed by Drakmor, presence, dead planets blooming with life, warring species learning to cooperate. Technology advancing in ways that served life rather than destroying it. The dragons don't just help other species, Ben explained. They make everything around them better. Their presence somehow enhances the natural empathy and cooperation of other beings. Look at this. The display showed a world where two species had been fighting a brutal war for generations. Then the dragons arrived. Within a few years, the war had ended and both species were working together to heal their damaged planet. It's not mind control, Ben continued. It's more like they awaken the better parts of whoever they're around. They help species see past their differences and work together. And that terrifies the hegemony, Lisa realized, because their whole system is based on domination and control. Exactly. The dragons represent everything the hegemony isn't. They're patient where the hegemony is aggressive, wise where the hegemony is fearful, and genuinely benevolent where the hegemony rules through strength. A soft sound from the storage bay made them all turn. Little Ash was making his way over to them, moving slowly, but with determination. He reached Lisa and pressed his small form against her leg. "The kind ones are sad," he said in his tiny voice. "Don't be sad. Mommy said the kind ones are rare. We don't want the kind ones to be sad because of us." Lisa knelt down to bring herself to Ash's eye level. "We're not sad because of you, little one. We're sad because bad things happened to your family." Ash looked at her with those ancient eyes that seemed far too old for such a young creature. "Mommy said some people are scared of good things. They think good things will make them weak. But good things make everyone stronger." From across the bay, Kira finally spoke for the first time in days. "Mommy told us about humans. She said she didn't know your species, but she could feel your kindness. She said that was rare in the galaxy now." Finn, the middle child, crept over to join them. He still wouldn't speak, but he touched Ben's hand with one small paw, and the doctor felt a wave of gratitude and trust that nearly brought tears to his eyes. "Captain," David said urgently, "I'm getting a priority message from Earth." The message appeared on the main screen. Admiral Foster's weathered face looked out at them, his expression serious but determined. "Captain Reynolds, by now you know that the hegemony wants you to surrender the dragon children. I want you to know that Earth's answer is final. We will not hand over refugee children to be murdered regardless of the cost." Lisa felt a surge of pride in her species, followed immediately by fear for what was coming. "The entire Terran defense fleet is mobilizing," Foster continued. "We may be newcomers to galactic politics, but we've seen the evidence of what the Drakmor really are, and what the hegemony has done to them. This ends now." The message ended, leaving them in silence. Rosa was the first to speak. "Captain, are we really going to fight the entire hegemony over 3 alien children?" Lisa looked at Ash, who had fallen asleep against her leg, at Kira, who was finally eating something, at Finn, who had started humming what might have been a lullaby his mother used to sing. "Rosa, in my 8 years of exploration, I've seen a lot of things. I've seen species that conquer and species that hide. I've seen civilizations that build and civilizations that destroy. But I've never seen anything like what these children represent." She gently stroked Ash's crystal scales, marveling at how they began to glow softly at her touch. "They're not weapons. They're not threats. They're the last remnants of a species that spent millions of years making the galaxy a better place. And now they're orphans, scared and alone, with nowhere left to run." Ben nodded slowly. The hegemony's own records prove that everywhere the dragons went, wars ended and cooperation flourished. They never conquered anyone. They never even defended themselves when the killing started. "And that's exactly why we have to protect them," Lisa said firmly. "Because if we don't, if we let the hegemony finish what they started, then we're saying that goodness can't exist in this galaxy. We're saying that the strong have the right to destroy the gentle simply because they're afraid of them." David looked at his communications board. "Captain, I'm picking up more hegemony transmissions. They're broadcasting to every species in known space, telling them what will happen to anyone who harbors the dragon abominations." "Let them broadcast," Lisa said. "Let the galaxy hear what they're really saying, that they're so afraid of beings who help others that they'll commit genocide to stop them." She looked at each of her crew members. "I won't lie to you. We're probably going to die for this. Earth's fleet is good, but the hegemony has been building their military for centuries. The odds are not in our favor. Rosa grinned. Captain, I've been an engineer for 15 years. I've never liked good odds anyway. Ben smiled as Kira curled. Up next to Ash, both dragon children finally sleeping peacefully. Someone has to stand up for the innocent. Might as well be us. David nodded. Besides, I've always wanted to see if human stubbornness is really as legendary as we claim. Lisa felt a warmth spread through her chest. This was what made humanity special, she realized. Not their technology or their weapons, but their absolute refusal to accept that the strong should prey on the weak. All right then, she said quietly, careful not to wake the sleeping dragons. David, send a message to Admiral Foster. Tell him we're bringing the children home, and we'll be ready to fight for them when we get there. As the Pioneer continued, its journey toward Earth and the confrontation that awaited them, the 3 dragon children slept peacefully for the first time since their mother died. And in their dreams, they heard echoes of her voice telling them that sometimes in the darkest corners of the galaxy, you could still find beings who would choose to do the right thing, no matter the cost. Admiral James Foster had been preparing for war his entire career, but never one like this. He stood on the bridge of the dreadnought Defiance looking out at the largest fleet humanity had ever assembled, and wondered if it would be enough. 31 ships hung in space around Earth's outer defense perimeter, representing every major vessel in the Terran defense fleet. Destroyers, cruisers, carriers, and his own flagship, all crewed by men and women who had volunteered for what might be humanity's last stand. Sir, his communications officer reported, we're receiving the final fleet roster confirmations. The Chinese sent their entire Pacific fleet. The Europeans mobilized everything from Mars Colony. Even the independent colonies are sending ships. Foster nodded grimly. In the week since Captain Reynolds had sent her message about the dragon children, something extraordinary had happened. Humanity hadn't debated or argued or formed committees. They had simply agreed, as one voice, that genocide was wrong and that someone had to say no. What's our status on the hegemony forces, he asked. Long-range sensors show 47 ships approaching the system. They're led by a massive Vorthan dreadnought that's twice the size of anything in our fleet. Intelligence identifies the commander as War Master Brutus, who has personally overseen the destruction of at least 12 dragon refugee groups. Foster absorbed this news without flinching. He had read the intelligence reports on Brutus, a career military officer who viewed the dragon genocide as his life's work. The Vorthan had been hunting Seren's people for over 2 centuries and took personal pride in each kill. Sir, another officer called out, the Pioneer is requesting permission to dock. Captain Reynolds says she has something important to show. Ours grant permission, and send Dr. Sarah Kim to meet them in Docking Bay 7. Foster had specifically requested Dr. Kim for this moment. As Earth's leading expert on interspecies psychology, she would be able to evaluate the dragon children and help the fleet understand what they were really fighting to protect. An hour later, Foster found himself in a converted conference room, staring at 3 small creatures that had somehow triggered an interstellar war. The dragon children sat close together on specially designed cushions, their crystal scales reflecting the room's lights in patterns that seemed almost hypnotic. Dr. Kim was kneeling near them, speaking in soft tones. It's all right, she said gently. These are friends. They want to help keep you safe. Little Ash, the smallest of the 3, looked up at Foster with eyes that seemed to contain starlight. Are you the protector leader? He asked in his tiny voice. I suppose I am, Foster replied, surprised by how young the dragon sounded despite his obvious intelligence. Mommy said protector leaders carry heavy sadness, Ash continued. She said they hurt inside because they have to make hard choices to keep others safe. Foster felt something stir in his chest. This child, who had watched his mother die and been hunted across the galaxy, was worried about his emotional well-being. Kira, the eldest, spoke up. We don't want people to die because of us. We can go away. Find somewhere far to hide. No, Foster said firmly. That's not how this works. You're under our protection now, and humans don't abandon those who need our help. Doctor, Kim looked up at Foster, wonder clear in her expression. Admiral, I need to report something unusual. In the past hour since I've been with them, I've felt different, calmer, more connected to everything around me. And it's not just me. Every crew member who's interacted with them reports the same thing. Captain Reynolds nodded. Dr. Carter documented the same effect during our journey. The children don't try to influence anyone, but their presence seems to enhance our natural empathy and cooperation. That's what the hegemony is really afraid of, Foster realized. Not their power, but their goodness. Finn, who hadn't spoken since they'd rescued him, suddenly looked directly at Foster. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely a whisper. The bad ones killed Mommy because she made other people want to be kind. They said kindness makes civilizations weak. Foster knelt down to bring himself to the dragon children's level. They're wrong, Finn. Kindness makes us strong. It gives us something worth fighting for. Dr. Kim pulled Foster aside. Admiral, I need you to understand something. These children aren't just refugees. Based on my observations and the historical data Captain Reynolds provided, the Drakmor may be the most psychologically healthy species the galaxy has ever produced. They seem to be naturally incapable of cruelty or deception, which makes them a threat to any system based on domination and control, Foster concluded. Exactly. The hegemony isn't just committing genocide. They're destroying the galaxy's conscience. A urgent alarm sounded throughout the ship. Foster's tactical officer's voice came through the comm system. Admiral, hegemony forces have dropped out of FTL at the edge of the system. They're broadcasting on all frequencies. Foster returned to the bridge, leaving the dragon children in Dr. Kim's care. The main display showed the hegemony fleet in all its terrible magnificence. 47 warships arranged in perfect battle formation, led by the massive Vorthan dreadnought Dominion. Put their transmission on screen, Foster ordered. The image that appeared made several of his bridge crew take involuntary steps backward. War Master Brutus was enormous even by Vorthan standards, his scaled hide marked with ritual scars that told the story of his many victories. His eyes burned with fanatical certainty. I am War Master Brutus of the Vorthan Empire, speaking for the Hegemony Council. His voice boomed through the bridge. Humans of Earth, you have 1 hour to surrender the dragon abominations you harbor. Do this, and your species will be permitted to continue existing as a minor member of galactic civilization. Foster gestured for his communications officer to open a channel. This is Admiral Foster of the Terran Defense Fleet. Our answer is no. Brutus's massive head tilted slightly, as if he couldn't quite believe what he was hearing. You would risk extinction for 3 animals? Humans you have. Existed in space for barely 1 of your centuries. We have been maintaining galactic order for 10 centuries. You cannot comprehend the threat these creatures represent. I comprehend it perfectly, Foster replied. You're afraid that if other species see how the dragons live, with compassion, wisdom, and genuine care for others, they might start questioning why they follow you. The dragons are manipulators, Brutus roared. They use their psychic abilities to make other species dependent on them. They prevent natural selection and strength-based evolution. Foster looked at the tactical display showing both fleets. The hegemony had overwhelming numerical and technological superiority, but something else caught his attention. Several of the hegemony ships were hanging back, not quite in formation with the others. War Master, I've read the historical records. The dragons never conquered anyone, they never enslaved anyone. They never even defended themselves when you started hunting them. The only thing they're guilty of is making the galaxy a more peaceful place. Peace through weakness, Brutus spat. They create dependency. They prevent species from developing the strength necessary to survive. No, Foster said quietly. They help species develop the wisdom to thrive. And that terrifies you, because your entire system depends on keeping everyone afraid and fighting each other. The War Master's eyes narrowed. You speak of things you do not understand, young species. We have seen civilizations rise and fall. We know what leads to stagnation and decay. The dragons represent evolutionary dead end, beings so removed from natural selection that they would eventually weaken all life in the galaxy. Foster opened another channel, broadcasting to both fleets and any ships within range. Let me tell you what I understand, War Master. I understand that 3 orphan children are so terrifying to your alliance that you brought 47 warships to kill them. I understand that you call beings dangerous, whose greatest crime was teaching others to cooperate instead of fight. And I understand that you're so afraid of what they represent that you'd rather commit genocide than let the galaxy see there's a better way to live. Several of the hegemony ships that had been hanging back began moving even further from the main formation. Foster realized that not everyone in the hegemony was comfortable with what they were doing. You have 30 minutes remaining, Brutus growled. Surrender the abominations or we will take them from your burned worlds. The transmission ended, leaving Foster's bridge in tense silence. His tactical officer spoke first. Sir, we're outnumbered more than 3-2, and their ships are more advanced than ours. I know, Foster replied, but we have something they don't. What's that, sir? Foster thought about little Ash asking about his sadness, about Finn finally speaking to offer comfort, about Kira worrying that people might die because of them. 3 children who had lost everything, but still cared more about others than themselves. We know we're right, he said simply, and sometimes that makes all the difference. He opened a fleet-wide channel. All ships, this is Admiral Foster. In a few minutes, we're going to face an enemy that has hunted an entire species to near extinction. They call themselves peacekeepers, but they're really just bullies who are afraid of anyone who might show the galaxy a better way to live. He paused, thinking of the dragon children 1 deck below. We can't match their numbers or their weapons, but we can match their determination, and we're fighting for something they can't understand. The simple belief that the strong should protect the weak, not destroy them. The responses came back immediately from every ship in the fleet. Acknowledged, Admiral. Ready to engage. Foster looked out at the hegemony fleet, knowing that in minutes people would start dying for 3 small creatures who had never hurt anyone. But as he thought about what those creatures represented, hope for a galaxy where cooperation could triumph over domination, he knew there was no other choice. All ships prepare for battle, he ordered. Today we find out if humanity's stubborn streak is really as legendary as we claim. The first shots of the Battle of Saren's Rest came from the hegemony fleet without warning. War Master Brutus had grown tired of waiting and ordered his ships to open fire on what he called the human obstruction. The human destroyer Courage was caught in the opening barrage. Captain Maria Santos had barely enough time to order her crew to abandon ship before the vessel erupted in a ball of fire and twisted metal. 85 people died in those first seconds, their lives lost protecting 3 children they had never met. Admiral Foster watched the destruction from his bridge and felt something cold settle in his chest. All ships, return fire, make them, pay for every inch. The human fleet moved with precision born of desperation. They were outgunned and outnumbered, but they had something the hegemony forces didn't expect. Absolute conviction in their cause. Every captain, every gunner, every engineer knew exactly why they were fighting. The hegemony had expected a quick victory. Instead, they found themselves facing humans who refused to break. The cruiser Defiant, its engines damaged and hull breached, in 3 places, continued firing until its weapons overloaded. The carrier Liberty launched every fighter it had, even knowing most wouldn't return. On the Pioneer, now surrounded by the protective formation of the human fleet, Dr. Kim stayed with the dragon children in their converted quarters. The ship shook with each impact from stray weapons fire, and little Ash pressed himself against her side. The kind ones are dying because of us, he whispered, tears like liquid starlight flowing down his crystal scales. No, little one, Dr. Kim said firmly. They're dying because they believe some things are worth fighting for. They're dying because they refuse to let bullies hurt children. Kira, the eldest dragon child, moved to the viewport and stared out at the battle raging around them. Explosions lit up the darkness of space as ships from both sides traded devastating blows. Mommy used to sing when she was scared. she said quietly. She said music was the first gift the universe gave to thinking beings. She said it reminded everyone that beauty could exist even in the darkest times. Finn, still the quietest of the three, crept over to his sister. "Do you remember the song?" For the first time since their mother's death, Kira smiled. "I think I do." She began to hum, a low melody that seemed to resonate through the ship's hull itself. Finn joined in, and then little Ash, his voice high and pure. The sound was unlike anything Dr. Kim had ever heard. Not quite music as humans understood it, but something deeper and more fundamental. The song spread beyond their quarters. Crew members throughout the Pioneer found themselves stopping what they were doing to listen. The melody somehow cut through the noise of battle, through fear and desperation, to touch something essential in everyone who heard it. On the bridge of the Defiance, Admiral Foster was coordinating the defense when he heard it. The Dragon Children's song came through the ship's communication system, carried by crew members who were humming along without even realizing it. For a moment, the chaos of battle seemed less overwhelming. "Sir," his tactical officer reported, "we've lost 6 ships, but we've taken down 8 of theirs. Several more hegemony vessels are showing damage." Foster nodded, but his attention was caught by something else. 3 hegemony ships on the edge of their formation had stopped firing entirely. They weren't retreating, they were just sitting, motionless in space. "What are those ships doing?" he asked. "Unknown, sir. They're not responding to hegemony command signals, but they're not attacking either." The Dragon Children's song was growing stronger now, somehow reaching beyond the Pioneer to touch minds throughout both fleets. It wasn't controlling or manipulating. It was simply reminding everyone who heard it what they were really fighting about. War Master Brutus felt the song too, and it filled him with rage. From his command chair aboard the massive dreadnought Dominion, he roared orders at his fleet. "Ignore the psychic manipulation. Focus all fire on the human flagship. End this now." But something had changed in the battle. The hegemony ships that had been hanging back at the start were now openly refusing orders. Their crews, hearing the Dragon Children's song, were remembering why they had originally joined their militaries, to protect their people, not to hunt down orphan children. Captain Torres of the human cruiser Steadfast saw his opportunity. His ship was badly damaged, weapons offline, but his engines still worked. "All crew to escape pods," he ordered. "I'm going to ram that Vorthon battleship." "Sir, you'll be killed," his first officer protested. Torres smiled grimly. "Those kids are singing to remind us what we're fighting for. Time to show them what humans do when we really mean business." The Steadfast accelerated toward the Vorthon battleship, its hull glowing white-hot from weapons fire. At the last second, Torres activated the ship's self-destruct sequence. The explosion tore through the enemy vessel's shields and left it drifting, powerless. The tide of battle began to turn. Inspired by Torres's sacrifice and guided by the Dragon Children's song, the human fleet fought with increasing coordination. They began targeting the hegemony ship's weak points, using their superior maneuverability to offset the enemy's firepower advantage. But War Master Brutus wasn't finished. The massive Dominion, largest ship in the hegemony fleet, began moving directly toward the Pioneer. "All vessels protect the transport ship," Admiral Foster ordered, but he could see it would be too late. The Dominion was too big, too heavily armed. That's when Foster made his decision. "All remaining ships follow my lead," he broadcast. "We're going to show these butchers what happens when you threaten children under human protection." The Defiance, its hull scarred and weapons nearly depleted, turned toward the massive Dominion. Behind it, every remaining human ship formed up in attack formation. They were outnumbered and outgunned, but they flew straight toward the enemy with unwavering determination. The Dragon Children's song reached a crescendo as the two forces closed on each other. In their quarters aboard the Pioneer, little Ash looked up at Dr. Kim with eyes full of ancient sadness and young hope. "The kind ones are teaching the galaxy something," he said softly. "They're showing everyone that some people will fight for good things even when it's hard." The space between the fleets erupted in fire and light as every ship opened fire at point-blank range. The Dominion's massive guns tore through human vessels, but the humans kept coming. the destroyer Resolute, exploded against the enemy's shields. The cruiser Determination rammed itself into the Dominion's weapon arrays. And then Admiral Foster, his flagship burning around him, made the choice that would be remembered across the galaxy. With his weapons dead and his ship dying, he pointed the Defiance directly at the Dominion's bridge and pushed the engines to maximum. For every child who ever begged for mercy, he said into his communication system, knowing his words were being recorded by every ship in both fleets, and for every adult who ever chose to protect them. The collision between the two flagships lit up the darkness like a new star being born. When the light faded, both ships were gone, taking War Master Brutus and Admiral Foster with them. The surviving hegemony ships, now leaderless and shaken by what they had witnessed, began to withdraw. But the damage was done, not to ships or weapons, but to the very foundation of what the hegemony represented. Throughout both fleets, beings of a dozen different species had heard the dragon children sing. They had watched humans sacrifice everything to protect three small creatures who had never hurt anyone. They had seen what real courage looked like when it was motivated by love instead of fear. The battle was over, but the war for the soul of the galaxy was just beginning. On the Pioneer, the three dragon children pressed close to Dr. Kim as they watched the surviving human ships regroup around them. Their song had ended, but its effects would last much longer. "Are the kind ones all gone?" Little Ash asked. "Doctor." Kim looked out at the dozen human ships still protecting them, their crews battered but unbroken. "No, little one. There are still plenty of kind ones left, and now the whole galaxy knows what they're capable of." Kira looked out at the stars where her mother had died and where so many humans had died protecting her family. "Mommy said the universe remembers all the good things people do. She said kindness echoes forever." As the Pioneer and its escort began the journey back to human space, those echoes were already spreading. On hegemony worlds, citizens demanded to know why their fleets were hunting orphaned children. On neutral worlds, species that had stayed silent during the dragon genocide began to speak out. The battle was won, but the real victory was just beginning. 6 months after the Battle of Seren's Rest, the galaxy was not the same place it had been before three dragon children sang their mother's lullaby to a human fleet. On the colony world of Haven, established specifically as a sanctuary for the dragon children, Lisa Reynolds walked through gardens that shouldn't have been possible. The planet had been a standard terraformed world when they arrived, livable but plain and unremarkable. Now it bloomed with life that seemed touched by magic. The changes had started small, plants growing faster and stronger near where the dragon children played, animals becoming calmer and more trusting. But as the months passed, the effects had spread across the entire colony. Haven was becoming something unprecedented in human experience, a world where everything seemed to work in perfect harmony. "Captain Reynolds," a young voice called out. Lisa turned to see Ash running toward her, no longer the frightened kitten-sized creature they had rescued. In 6 months he had grown to the size of a large dog, his crystal scales now bright with health and happiness. Behind him came Kira and Finn, both healthy and growing strong. "Look what I learned," Ash said excitedly, touching his paw to a withered flower that had been damaged by the morning frost. Where he touched it, life returned. The flower straightened, its petals brightened, and within moments it was more beautiful than it had ever been. "That's wonderful, Ash," Lisa said, kneeling to pet his crystalline head. "But remember what Dr. Carter taught you about not overdoing it." Ben Carter appeared from behind a cluster of fruit trees that were producing yields no botanist could explain. "He's been helping the colonists all morning," Ben said with a smile. "Yesterday he healed Mrs. Thompson's arthritis just by sitting with her while she had her morning coffee." Lisa looked around at the transformation Haven had undergone. The 3,000 human colonists who had volunteered to help establish the sanctuary were thriving in ways that went beyond physical health. Crime was nearly non-existent, conflicts resolved themselves through discussion and compromise, and everyone seemed genuinely happy to help their neighbors. "Any word from Earth about the political situation?" Lisa asked. Ben's expression grew more serious. The ripple effects are still spreading. 3 more species have withdrawn from the hegemony since the battle. The Kalari Confederacy is demanding a full investigation into the dragon genocide, and there are reports of uprisings on several Vorthon worlds. They walked toward the colony's administrative center, where David Park now served as communications coordinator for what had become known as the Haven Protocols, humanity's promise to provide sanctuary for any species facing extinction or persecution. The requests for sanctuary keep coming, David reported as they entered his office. We've got refugee ships from 7 different species heading toward human space. Some of them have been fleeing hegemony pacification for decades. Do we have the resources to help them all? Lisa asked. That's the interesting part, David said, pulling up colony statistics. Ever since the dragon children arrived, our productivity and efficiency have improved by over 300%. It's like their presence makes everything work better. Kira, who had been listening quietly, spoke up. Mommy said that's what the Drakmor were for. We don't make things work better. We help everyone remember how to work together the way they're supposed to. Dr. Sarah Kim appeared in the doorway, tablet in hand. She had remained on Haven to study the dragon children's effects on human psychology and behavior. Captain, you need to see the latest reports from the psychological evaluation teams. They gathered around Kim's tablet as she displayed her findings. The children aren't using any kind of mind control or psychic manipulation. Instead, they seem to naturally enhance empathy and cooperation in everyone around them. People become more patient, more understanding, more willing to see other viewpoints. Is it permanent? Ben asked. That's the remarkable part. It seems to be. Even colonists who have left Haven temporarily report lasting changes in how they relate to others. The dragons aren't changing who people are. They're helping people become the best version of themselves. Little Finn, still the quietest of the 3, tugged on Lisa's sleeve. When she knelt down, he whispered, "Can I show you something?" He led them to a hill overlooking the main colony settlement. From there, they could see the entire community. Humans working side by side in the fields, children of different families playing together without conflict, elderly colonists teaching skills to eager young adults. This is what Mommy wanted, Finn said softly. Not just for dragons, but for everyone. She said the galaxy used to be like this a long time ago before people forgot how to be kind to each other. Ash bounded up the hill to join them. The mean ones were scared because they thought we would make people weak. But we don't make people weak. We help them remember that being strong means protecting others, not hurting them. A communication alert sounded from David's portable unit. He listened to the incoming message, his expression growing more amazed with each word. Captain, you're not going to believe this. That message was from the Nexus Collective. They're one of the founding members of the hegemony. They're requesting permission to send a delegation to Haven. They want to apologize. Lisa felt her heart skip a beat. The Nexus Collective was one of the most powerful civilizations in the galaxy. If they were reconsidering their position on the dragon genocide, it could change everything. There's more, David continued. Similar messages are coming in from 4 other hegemony species. They're all asking for the chance to meet the dragon, children, and see Haven for themselves. Kira looked up at Lisa with her ancient, wise eyes. Mommy said this would happen someday. She said that once people saw what kindness really looked like, they wouldn't be able to pretend it was weakness anymore. Over the following weeks, ships from across the galaxy began arriving at Haven. Not warships this time, but diplomatic vessels carrying leaders who had spent centuries convinced that the dragons were a threat to galactic civilization. The first delegation was from the Kalari Confederacy. Their ambassador, a being named Elder Thorn, had personally overseen the destruction of 3 dragon colonies during the height of the genocide. He arrived expecting to find dangerous creatures plotting the overthrow of galactic order. Instead, he found Ash teaching human children how to help injured animals, Finn working with colonists to design more efficient farming techniques, and Kira sharing stories of her mother that emphasized patience, wisdom, and forgiveness above all else. I don't understand, Elder Thorn said to Lisa as they watched the dragon children play with human youngsters in one of Haven's parks. We were told they were manipulative, dangerous, a threat to the natural order of species development. Look, around you, Lisa replied. Do you see manipulation? Do you see anyone being forced to do anything they don't want to do? Thorn watched as little Ash helped a human child who had scraped her knee, healing the wound with a gentle touch, and then staying with her until she stopped crying. But surely this level of harmony isn't natural. Surely there must be some kind of psychic influence. Dr. Kim joined the conversation. Ambassador, we've run every test we can think of. The dragon children don't control minds or manipulate emotions. They simply radiate a kind of emotional health that influences everyone around them to be more cooperative and empathetic. And this frightened the hegemony enough to commit genocide? Thorn asked quietly. It terrified them, Lisa confirmed, because it proved that cooperation works better than domination, that wisdom is more powerful than force, and that the strong really should protect the weak instead of exploiting them. More delegations arrived over the following months, the Nexus Collective, the Stellar Commonwealth, even representatives from some Vorthon worlds that had overthrown their military leadership after learning the truth about the dragon genocide. Each delegation arrived expecting to find evidence of the threat that had justified centuries of murder. Instead, they found a community where different species lived and worked together in unprecedented harmony, where conflicts were resolved through understanding rather than force, and where 3 orphaned children had somehow taught an entire world how to be better. The final delegation was the most surprising of all. A single ship arrived carrying survivors, dragons who had hidden in the farthest reaches of the galaxy, believing they were the last of their kind. Lisa watched from the landing pad as the ship's doors opened and 4 adult dragons emerged. They were magnificent beings, each one radiating the same gentle wisdom that the children possessed, but amplified by centuries of life and experience. The reunion between the children and the adult survivors was unlike anything she had ever witnessed. The air itself seemed to sing as the Drakmore family was made whole again, their crystal scales creating patterns of light that brought tears to every human observer's eyes. The eldest of the adult dragons, an ancient being who called himself Wisdom Keeper, Sage approached Lisa with dignified grace. Human protector leader, he said, his mental voice filled with gratitude that transcended words. Our younglings have told us of your people's sacrifice. You faced extinction to protect children of a species you had never met. This is a kindness that will echo through eternity. Lisa felt the weight of everything that had happened over the past year. The discovery of the dragon children, the decision to protect them, the battle that had cost so many lives, and now this moment of hope and renewal. We couldn't let them be murdered, she said simply. It would have been wrong. Sage regarded her with eyes that held the wisdom of millennia. Your species is young in the galaxy's history, but you have already shown what you truly are. You are protectors of the innocent, defenders of the weak, and guardians of hope itself. As the months continued to pass, the changes spread beyond Haven to the galaxy itself. The hegemony officially disbanded, its member species choosing to form a new coalition based on cooperation rather than domination. The dragon genocide was acknowledged as one of the greatest crimes in galactic history, and memorials were built on every world to ensure it would never be forgotten. But perhaps the most important change was simpler and more profound. Throughout known space, beings looked at the stars and remembered that sometimes in the darkest places, you could still find people willing to do the right thing regardless of the cost. On Haven, the dragon children continued to grow and learn and play, surrounded by humans who had chosen love over fear, protection over persecution, and hope over despair. And when they sang their mother's lullaby in the evenings, the melody carried beyond their world to touch hearts across the galaxy, reminding everyone who heard it that kindness, once awakened, could never truly be destroyed. The last scene that Lisa would always remember took place on the first anniversary of the Battle of Seren's Rest. The dragon children, now nearly full-grown, had organized a ceremony to honor all those who had died protecting them. As the names of the fallen were read aloud, little Ash, no longer so little, placed his paw on a crystal memorial that would sing their names to the stars for as long as the galaxy endured. "Thank you," he said to the assembled crowd of humans and aliens who had come to pay their respects. "Thank you for showing the universe that some people will always choose to protect the good things, no matter how hard it gets." And in that moment, Lisa Reynolds knew that humanity had found its true place in the galaxy, not as conquerors or rulers, but as the species that would always stand up and say no more when the strong tried to devour the weak. It was a legacy she was proud to leave for future generations, a reminder that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply refuse to let the good things die.